Chris is joining us from Turn 10 Consulting, which he set up in 2017. It's a Brighton-based talent and organisation, this is quite difficult to say, a talent and organisational development consultancy that works with leaders in the digital and tech sector. He was formerly Director of Talent and Organisational Development for eBay in EMEA and has 20 years experience in this field. And I think, Chris, you spoke last year, didn't you, at the summit? He's joined by Rob and Jon from Graphite Digital. Rob's MD and Jon is Client Services Director. Graphite Digital is a digital product agency in Brighton and London, which helps their global clients create purposeful digital products and brilliant digital experiences. So Rob has led Graphite since 2019 and is a 2017 BEMA 100 winner and is on the BEMA Young Talent Council focusing on creating pipeline for future digital innovators. And Jon leads the client service and strategy work streams and is an experienced digital strategist with a passion for helping big businesses leverage technology. So that was quite a lot of introduction. Come up and share your story.
Thank you, Claire. I have to say that's quite a build-up, so I hope we live up to it. Okay, first of all, just to introduce our talk, the focus of what we'll be talking about today is particularly around how you retain and develop your top talent. And as Claire mentioned, it builds on the talk that I gave last year at Talent 2017, but I'm guessing that this is a very different bunch of people in front of me now, and the people who were there last year probably have absolutely no recollection of kind of who I am or what I said, I'm guessing. So what I'm going to do is, by means of an introduction, is do a little recap in terms of how we got where we are today and what we're going to be talking about. So in terms of me, I guess, I loved working. I guess the truth is I absolutely loved working for eBay. But I think probably the truth is I probably hated Southern Rail a little bit more. And I think, like most people, I had that dream of wanting to live and work within Brighton. So basically, I decided back in sort of early 2017 to set up Turn 10 Consulting with a view to work with tech and digital businesses, SMEs within Brighton to help them scale. And I think, my key thoughts about that were that I thought, well, first of all, how am I going to do that? So the first thing I thought was, well, join Wired Sussex. So I joined Wired Sussex, saw that they were running Talent 2017, got in touch with them and said, would you be interested in me sharing some of the learning and insights that I've got from eBay? They said yes. So I came along, did a presentation last year where I really talked about the way eBay approaches managing their top talent, and also some of the things about what the top talent really look for in businesses and what are the key things you need to do to really think about particularly retaining and developing your top talent to build a pipeline of talent to scale your business. So I spent quite a lot of talking about that. At Talent 2017, which was really good for me, I have to say, I kind of obviously it was an opportunity to meet a few people. I think some of those messages resonated with Graphite, and actually I can see Luke down there now. I actually met Luke last year who came and had a chat afterward, and those conversations continued, and they then grew into work, and then Graphite is now a client of mine, and we've been working on those issues specifically around culture, around leadership team, and about being a leader over the past year. So I thought it might be quite interesting this year to come back. So I had a chat with James and had a chat with Reefer and said, would it be interesting to come back after last year I talked about, well, these are the things I kind of think that tech SMEs should be really focusing on. Would it be interesting to come back this year and then talk about, well, actually, we've been doing some of that work, so it's real work with a digital agency based in Brighton and actually do a really honest picture of how that's gone. They said yes, so here we are. So hopefully that gives you kind of an introduction in terms of kind of who we are. Okay, so in terms of the talk, it's going to be split into 4 parts. Okay, the first piece, I'm going to do a very brief recap in giving some insights in terms of some of the work we did at eBay, but specifically, what are the things that I believe, and based on my experience there and other businesses, helps to retain your top tech talent. Then Rob's going to come along and tell you a bit more about Graphite's journey and some of the work we've been doing. Then Jon's going to come along and tell you a little about his experience of working with an executive coach and his journey to becoming a leader. And then finally, I'm going to wrap up at the end with perhaps some of the key learnings. And these aren't just my learnings, but the lessons we've all learned over the past year in terms of doing this work. So hopefully that's something that's going to be interesting with you. And one thing that I think was really important to me when we were putting this together is that it's really authentic. So we did do a rehearsal it was about half an hour, wasn't it? We did about half an hour rehearsal last night, but none of this is scripted. So it was really important to me that what Rob and Jon say is authentic and is actually a real reflection. So there's some real learning for you here. Okay, so insights from eBay. Okay, so this really focuses on, what I learned there and what I've learned in other businesses. I mean, I'm slightly embarrassed to say this actually, I've worked in talent since the late 90s, which is, I think you'd agree, is quite a long time. And these are perhaps some of the things that I've learned that reinforced in terms of my experience at eBay and the things that the top tech talent really look for and what are the things that really tie them to a business. And the first thing is around a leadership team. It's about a leadership team that they can believe in. I think a leadership team they trust. I think we heard about this from Uber, trust to do the right thing. That's really important. And that says something about the moral compass that leadership team has. And that's something that, again, came up again and again in conversations I had with talent. That's absolutely key, that they have the respect and belief in those people. The second thing, and often in tech SMEs, the leaders and managers can be one and the same thing, depending on the scale of the business. And probably one of the most important things is the manager. I would say that what came up in conversations, as I said again and again, is having a manager that has the skill sets to have really powerful performance, development, and career conversations is absolutely fundamental. But also having a manager where they feel a real sense of connection to, where they feel that the manager really invests in them. So that's really investing real time into getting to know them, into understand them, understand what ticks, and really helping them to grow and develop as an individual, and also helping them to grow and develop their career is something that was absolutely central to retaining key talent. And we saw that again and again when we had talent reviews. The third one, which is probably slightly less important, but still really important, was around team members. And what I'd say here is I'd like to think about a time when you started a job, and this has probably happened to me 3 times in my career. When you started a new job, you're about a week in, you're trying to benchmark the people you're working with, and you get that feeling that the people you're working with, they're really, really good, And you get that feeling these people really know what they're doing, and there's going to be no slack days here whatsoever. And that's something that came through again and again for talented people. It's about the quality of the people they're working for, the people who really keep you on your toes and really push you to do your best work and create a sense of competitive tension with it, constructive competitive tension within the team that drives you to do really good work, was something that came out. And the final point, which in some ways is a summation of all of these things, is about the culture. Is a sense that you're in the business, it's a place where you feel you belong. There's a sense of fit, and also there's a sense that it's a place where you could see yourself building and growing a career. And I think I'd ask you to think about a time, and I can think of one. I'm not going to give a name, but I think of one example in particular when I walked in and I was there a week, and you just know you've made a really bad decision. And I'm guessing pretty much most people in this room will have a similar experience to some degree. So that fit piece is really important. And if you look back, I think, if you look at the culture, a lot of that is about and is shaped by the behaviours of the leadership team, the behaviours of the managers and the team. It's about the way things are done sort of within that business. Okay, that's probably all I want to say at this point in terms of sharing some learnings from me. I just want to hand over to Rob now, who's going to tell you a bit more about Graphite's journey.
Thanks, Chris. Hi, everybody. We're going to keep it brief. I'm aware it's just before lunch, so we want to get it impactful. What this is also going to be is very honest. So, yeah, this is kind of our story, and don't tell too many people about it. But hopefully there'll be some useful lessons for you. We've made the classic mistakes, and if this stops anyone from making one of those, then it's been worthwhile. So as we said, Graphite is a digital product agency. We count ourselves fortunate to have grown in Brighton. So we formed in 2009, and we've always punched above our weight in terms of the work that we do. We work with massive companies and delivering really creative and impactful products for them. So we're on the seafront now, having moved around Brighton a little bit, and right now we're on a growth curve again, and we're more confident than ever about our next few years. And I'd say today that we have a strong identity and culture. This wasn't always the case, and so yeah, so here's a bit of our story, and so some of those classic mistakes. So we started in 2009, but I'm going to fast forward to 2012. We won some big accounts at that time. We were only 4 people in a room, but we won the Costa Digital account. We worked BP, Pfizer, loads of other people. And we were doing great work, and we were really profitable. Our culture was really exciting, and people were free to make their roles their own. There was quite a flat hierarchy, and we grew quickly to meet the demands of the businesses we were working with. And the hires were made around the requirements from those businesses. So they were shaping our direction rather than us. And people wanted to belong to that, actually. They found that really exciting. But to be honest, it was the Rob show. The relationships with the clients and the relationships with the team were largely conducted through me. And they weren't actually bought into a longer-term vision or purpose, I guess. And in 2016, things changed a little bit. Well, I'd say a lot. One of our biggest clients put a lot of pressure on us to deliver more and more. And it was more than we could bear, and it was more than actually they should have been asking for. And we started pushing back. And the team began to crack up under that pressure, and we were actually a long way from being united. Having just grown to the biggest we'd ever been, we had quite senior leadership emerging and joining into the company. It was a very difficult time, and actually, it didn't work. So they insourced some of their work, and it took our work profile, it made it slightly different. And so some people were very busy, some people were not busy at all. And for the first time in our career, people started leaving. And this was really painful. That's a sign of things not working out so well. And a harsh but fair mentor said to me, if the body is sick, then the head is sick. So if the business isn't working, then it's a leadership problem. It's the management. And it was absolutely true. We were one of 25,000 agencies in the UK, and we didn't have a plan or a vision or a purpose. We had just rode on the coattails of our clients and our good relationships. And so in 2017, we started to fix that. And we became quite a lean team through necessity. But we clarified our purpose and our approach, and through that began winning new business. Still, I'd say, though, we weren't quite culturally united. And so this was the key bit. And we started investing in leadership skills and relationships between ourselves and the relationship skills as leaders. And I'll let Jon share a little bit more about this. But the output was clarity about the roles, clarity about the direction of the business. And basically, I got some feedback which was quite interesting. Stopped being nice, basically, and actually people wanted accountability. They wanted to do a good job and have a clear direction. And so that's what we all took on board, and I did a lot of learning there. And we haven't learned everything and haven't solved everything, but we've definitely moved a long way. In 2018, we're on a growth path again, hiring up 6 people this year, maybe more, and we've become a far more effective business as a result. So, a few points. We've become more effective, and as a result of having a clear plan and clear leadership structure and better relationships, we now know we have the right people on the bus, and we're heading in the same direction. And that is really empowering for everybody. The team are more satisfied because it's clear what's expected of them. We're not doing new things every day in terms of changing direction or making it up as we go along. We're doing the same things in some senses, the same processes, but in a different context every day. And that's really empowering. So the individuals can see their personal career path laid out ahead of them. And we've got growth plans. We've done the target operating model for every year from now till 2022. And so we know exactly who the mix of skills we believe we will need. It probably won't be exactly that, but it gives people direction, and they find their place within that. But chiefly we're winning pitches again because of the clarity of approach and but customers can also sense our singularity of vision and unity, which is really empowering. So in summary, 3 recommendations for leaders in small agencies. Firstly, get crystal clear on your identity and your plan. Secondly, bring everyone on the journey, be open and honest. And thirdly, continually invest in leadership skills and relationship building, and especially at an executive level. We, as small businesses, we're often happy to invest in our team, but sometimes don't invest in ourselves and our leadership skills. And I'd say that's really important, and it needs to be always on. So yeah, hopefully that's been interesting, but Jon will tell us a little bit more about the journey, or the part of going through that from another perspective. Thank you.
Thanks, Rob. So to start, just a little bit about me and my kind of journey into this and how I ended up. So I never really had any intention of becoming a manager, kind of happened by accident. I was working at a small-ish agency, like 50 people, mixture of online and offline comms in Reigate about 10 years ago. And I turned up to work one day and the head of digital didn't turn up. And they took a couple of weeks to think about what they were going to do. And then they said, do you want to be the head of digital? After I'd only been there about 6 months and I was just an account manager. So that was a kind of interesting start to leading people. And then so right off the bat, I inherited 12 people, many of whom were considerably older than me and not at all interested in being managed by me, which is normal and fine, I'm sure. I didn't react to that absolutely in the best way possible, I don't think, and tried to just go on a full charm offensive and try and win them over, picking up loads of bad habits on the way and just generally being a terrible manager. But it was a good playground for me, and I managed to experiment on them and learn a lot of things, mostly things to not do, but you know, it's helpful in the long run. So after a couple of years of doing that, I then went off to London to work in a pure digital agency, as you do, not just for the money. I just didn't want to be turning brochures into websites anymore. So once I arrived there, started as head of projects, and then gradually we grew a team. So it's quite a small agency to begin with. By the time I left, it was about 30 people when I came to Graphite a couple of years ago. And through that, I've never really had any kind of formal management training. But because we were all quite a tight knit team, and it grew really organically over time, I think I got away with it a bit more because people could see me in the role and see what value I brought rather than just being sort of dropped into it. That wasn't exactly how it worked when I came to Graphite, though. As Rob mentioned, there was an incredibly flat structure at Graphite, and so the introduction of people in kind of management or leadership positions was something that I think we'd all agree we might do slightly differently had we done it again. And the people that were working at Graphite at the time were really used to just having direct access to Rob the whole time. Everything, like Rob said, it was very much about him, and people were a bit confused about why I was there at all, why I was needed, and what it was I was supposed to be doing. And I think because of that, and also joining at a really emotional time as well. So the time that Rob described in 2016 when we were on a real low ebb just happened to be basically my first day, which was super good. So yeah, coming from a business that was doing pretty well, and like I kind of built up credibility and people understood who I was and what I was doing, I made some absolute rookie mistakes coming into Graphite, and they were as follows. Come on, slides, you can do it. So I assumed everything at Graphite would be exactly the same, and that there would be no difference whatsoever from working in a London agency where people basically just eat, slept at the office, everything would happen 24 hours a day. Graphite, and I assume now Brighton, from my exposure to the rest of the Brighton agency scene as well, it was quite different to that. People weren't up for that. I had a complete lack of respect for the history of Graphite. I think because it wasn't going amazingly well at the time when I arrived, I thought, this is perfect. This is a green field. We can do anything we want and try and fix loads of stuff. And I got my hands dirty, and people also didn't like that either, funnily enough. And we had this real task focus where I was just trying to bang through a list. We were just trying to survive at that point, trying to service this client that had experienced big change. And then also to try and develop a new offering, something that would be more long-term, more stability for us, and just build partnerships with clients, because that relationship was quite poisonous. It was quite they were really dominating us and telling us what we had to do, and we weren't really an equal partner in it. So at the same time, trying to build communications externally from the business people to try and establish us as a real partner was quite difficult when there's just a huge to-do list of stuff that just needs to be bashed out in order to stop you getting shouted at the next daily stand-up. So it was quite an interesting junction, and so yeah, I would on joining another business again, which may happen in the future, is that I definitely wouldn't do any of this next time. So although things were pretty emotional at the time, as Rob mentioned, everything did settle down eventually, and then the introduction to beginning to work with Chris that Rob's already covered, I was kind of the guinea pig for that, so I had the honour of going first. It's always an interesting conversation when your manager comes to you and says, I want to invest in you. That's great news. But then you go away and think about it. There must be a problem why he wants to pay this money for you to be improved. So it's quite an interesting balance, but I went into it with an open mind and started working with Chris. He's not a bad guy. So that began, just to kind of take you through how that actually works. So we obviously did like a contracting session where we agreed on what the priorities and stuff would be. That's not very interesting, so we'll skip that. But the stuff that we did that was particularly interesting and that you might find some value in as well, we did MBTI. Has anyone done that before? It's pretty common, right? It's not too strange. Basically a big quiz where you work out what your preferred ways of working are. It was very interesting for me. I learnt quite a bit about myself, and particularly when we compared them as a leadership team, we learnt quite a lot about each other and our preferred styles. So it's really about it's not so much about you as a person, it's about the way you like to work. And so we got a lot of good information from that. And my colleagues were quite surprised to discover that I'm actually very much an introvert, and it's all just an act. The 360, which I should imagine a lot of you have probably done, getting feedback from all of your peers and people that work that you line manage. Probably the most difficult non-client facing thing I've ever done. It really forces you to think very carefully about how your behaviour impacts other people, what examples you set, how people like to work, and you find out a lot of stuff from that. It was pretty painful to read some of it, but what you end up with at the end of it, if you work with somebody to kind of step through it, is to understand what the actionable things that come out of it are and what you can actually do to make an improvement in as a leader, and actually to start thinking of yourself as a leader rather than just a person that nominally approves people's holiday and says whether they get a pay rise or not once a year. I think that was the big turning point for me, was to stop thinking about it like that and actually start about the example that you can set in the business. So a big change considering the background that I'd come from, and it's the first time I've really been forced to kind of sit down and think about that and how it actually impacted everybody else. And then ongoing sessions. So initially I was meeting with Chris every 2 weeks. Now we're down to just once a month for a couple of hours. We're in the kind of fine-tuning phase now, but it's something that I've got a lot out of, particularly some of the kind of more HR-y stuff as well I'd never had to really deal with before. Being able to just role-play some of that stuff, which I hate the idea of role-play. Like, the guys could barely get me to practice this yesterday, but actually doing that really helped me to have a very clear vision and clear thoughts about what it was I wanted to get out of these meetings with the rest of the team, and hopefully give them a better outcome as well as the business. So yeah, in terms of the future, that's ongoing. I've got a lot out of working with Chris, and I hope somebody else might get something from another coach, or Chris is available at very reasonable rates. Do I get the check now or later? Okay, cool. Cool, that's me, thanks.
Rob, John, first of all, thanks a lot for being so honest and sharing all that. That's great. I'm really conscious of time. I think we're over. So what I'm going to try and do is kind of whiz through some of the learnings. And if people have got questions, I'm going to be around all day. So if anyone's got any questions, you can grab me during the day. Okay, so probably some of the key learnings that have come out of this whole process, and these are built by the three of us. As I think Rob talked about before, actually being really clear about your purpose from a commercial perspective, that's really important. But also in terms of, it's a really powerful tool in terms of building a sense of connection between you and the people who work for you. That's one thing. I think also aligning your vision and culture, again, is Good for time. Apparently I'm good for time. That might be bad news for you, I'm not sure, but I could be quick. Okay, so the other thing here is also about, I was going to say, is around aligning your vision and culture. I've actually met quite a few companies over the past year, and a lot of companies I've met do have a business plan, a strategy to varying degrees. Graphite, quite a sophisticated organisation, you've got a 3-year vision. It's quite interesting when I've spoken to a lot of people, they don't actually think about actually what kind of culture they need to actually deliver that. And the way I think about the vision, the strategy is obviously about what you want to achieve, but how you do it is through culture, it's through those behaviours. So one of the things we've done is actually spent quite a bit of time thinking about if that's the vision we want to achieve as a business and where we want to be with a really clear commercial targets, actually what kind of culture do we need to create? And then specifically, what does that actually mean for us as leaders in the business on a day-to-day basis? So it's not about, it's not about necessarily about training course, about how we're going to be with each other, with the people we work with on a day-to-day basis. And they're the kind of things that really shape culture. But it's thinking about vision, it's thinking about where you want to be, and you're thinking about the culture you need to actually deliver that. As Rob said, I think investing in your leadership team and your leaders, I think, you tend to invest in your teams and people like that, but, I think if you're looking at where you want to get return, if you want to shape the right kind of culture, you want to keep your best people, the place you really need to start is make sure you've got... you really invest in yourself in terms of your leadership skills, making sure you're equipped to have really great conversations. That's something I learned at eBay. The ability to have really great conversations around performance, around development, around career, and some coaching. So it doesn't mean you have to be trained to be a coach, but having some kind of core coaching skills to have really great conversations is something that's really powerful. But also making sure you work together well as a team. And you know as well as I do, even in big business, but particularly in small SMEs, everybody sees everything. If there's dysfunction with the team, you can be sure everybody sees it. So actually having a really genuinely, well-integrated team, as Rob talked about that are working well, that have talked about the issues, is something that's absolutely critical to creating the right kind of culture. Hire the best and don't compromise. I talked about that earlier. I think it's really important. I know it's a real challenge within Brighton. I know the jobs market's really tight. But I would encourage you, if you're going to make permanent hires, really hang out for the best people you get, because they are going to be your future pipeline of talent. And the final point really is about really, as people in the room who are managers, people who are owners of business, really grow your talent, really see them as an investment for the future, and really put the time and effort in. But recognise that actually a lot of that, if you work on the basis that 90% of all learning is on the job, actually, in terms of growing your talent, it involves you and the people around you really investing your time in actually helping to grow and shape them. So it's about your time, about your kind of skill sets, but recognising that the talent within your business is going to be your future pipeline, and it's one of the things that's going to fundamentally help to scale your business. So it's, in my opinion, but I would say that obviously, but it's worth your time. And that's all I've got to say. So thank you very much, and thanks again to Rob and Jon. Cheers. Thank you.